In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today I'm going to try and do something a little different. I'm going to do my first ever movie review. I know in the past I've done rankings, like I ranked the Three Dark Shadows movies, I ranked the Star Wars movies, I ranked the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies, but today I'm going to try and straight up reviewing a movie. I tried to do this last week, but things happened, so here we are. So today, I am going to be reviewing Cruella, released in May of 2021, directed by Craig Gillespie. Craig Gillespie, the guy who made I, Tonya. Cruella stars Emma Stone and Emma Thompson. I am going to try and avoid spoilers, as always, but I do this unscripted, so just in case, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place. Cruella is out in theaters right now, or it's available as a premium purchase for Disney+. But still, yeah, like I said, I'm going to try and avoid spoilers as much as possible. And Cruella seems to be a really divisive movie from what I've seen online. Personally, I fall into the side of liking it. I really enjoyed this movie. A lot of people, ever since the teaser came out, have been kind of comparing this to Joker. But that's not really accurate. They're two completely different movies. Joker is a villain origin story. It's about it's essentially the one bad day story. What happens when a man has one bad day and society turns its back on him. Cruella is a revenge movie. She basically starts down her path because she is getting revenge against someone who wronged her. They are two vastly different stories. Although if we have to keep making this comparison, Cruella is the better Joker. Because Cruella knows what it is. It's not pretentious, and it doesn't pretend to be talking about issues, scratching the surface while pretending to be so deep, bro. But enough about that. So, like I said, I really liked the movie. There were some things to talk about, of course, but first of all, right off the bat, the movie looks gorgeous. And I'm so happy about that. So, the film is set in the 60s. But thankfully it doesn't fall into the pitfalls of what movies usually set in the 60s are doing, with very psychedelic colors or going into sort of more hippie-ish territory. This film has a major focus on the fashion industry, and there are very bright and vibrant colors, but it never goes too far in that direction, which is a good thing, at least for me. I also really like it because Cruella is not a film marketed for that broad family appeal. It's not trying to do that family dynamic that Disney usually goes for. Its target audience is young adults. And in the past, movies aimed at young adults, like The Hunger Games, most recently, most notably, and, usually those young adult novel-to-film adaptations, they do this thing where they apply sort of a gray filter or a blue filter over everything, and they really mute the colors to give it this kind of dull, dreary aesthetic. Cruella doesn't do that. Like I said, it's bright and vibrant, and the movie just looks gorgeous. Emma Stone gives a really good performance, but I do, especially for this particular characterization, although I do think she is overshadowed by Emma Thompson, who, as the main villain of this movie, Baroness von Hellman, kinda steals every scene. Like, she is just, like I said, in my earlier remarks on the Cruella Joker comparison, Cruella knows what kind of movie it is, and Emma Thompson knows what kind of movie she's in, and she plays it up gloriously. This movie is surprisingly campy, and it works really well. I will also say the movie, as far as doing a villain origin story goes, is an improvement over Maleficent. because, like around the halfway point of Maleficent, when the movie starts getting into retelling Sleeping Beauty, it sort of repaints Maleficent as the good guy the entire time. Cruella doesn't go that far, and that is one of my. And I'll talk more about that in a moment, because she still does some pretty reprehensible things. Nothing too outrageous, but I will say at one point, she does contemplate murder. And as far as her more repugnant actions go, she. Oh, what's a good way to do it? The film, really tries to show how she's in the wrong for doing it, mainly through the reactions of the people around her. Mainly Horace and Jasper, which, speaking of, I really liked the dynamic between Cruella, Horace, and Jasper. Watching both the animated movie and the live-action remake, more on that in a moment as well, I always kind of wondered, Cruella hired Horace and Jasper, and then, basically she paid them to kidnap the puppies. And then she made a point of withholding their pay until the job was done. And, she even got to the point where she tried to blackmail them and frame them for the kidnapping herself. So, it kind of reached this point of, why would they work for her? Why wouldn't they just turncoat and, report her for everything that happened and, get off light? The film gives them this kind of found family dynamic, which makes sense in context, trust me. And, showing this relationship does show, why do Horace and Jasper continually work for her? Speaking of, like Maleficent, Cruella takes place in its own continuity. Unlike Maleficent, Cruella doesn't go into 101 Dalmatians, but the film does take place in its own continuity that neither the animated film or the live-action film would slot into. Also, speaking of, the nods to 101 Dalmatians, while there are plenty of nods to the animated movie, this film, what I really like is it's playing more in style to the live-action movie from 1996, I believe, with Glenn Close. Which also, given that there is already a live-action remake of 101 Dalmatians, does kind of make sense why they would do something like this. Although they did also make a live-action remake of the Jungle Book in the 90s, and then did another one. So, what do I know? But yeah, no. While there are nods to the animated movie, and even Dodie Smith's original novel, for example, in the animated movie and the novel, Cruella and Anita were friends in school. And that's kind of shown here, very briefly. Whereas in the live-action remake, Cruella is a fashion mogul, and Anita is kind of her prized employee. But yeah, as the point I was getting at, this film more, continuity-wise, ties into the live-action movie more than the animated movie. As I mentioned, there are still nods to the animated movie that I didn't really like. For example, one really unnecessary one is that Roger is in this movie. And when we first meet him, he is the Baroness's lawyer. And, they kind of mention that he likes music. He's also a musician on the side. And that's how he's introduced. The next time we see him, the very next scene he's in, the Baroness fires him. And we don't see him for the rest of the movie until the post-credits scene. That entire thing is just like, well, that was unnecessary. Conversely, like I said, Anita is in this movie too. She's okay. I like how she's used. Cruella is using her past friendship with Anita to kind of, because Anita is a gossip columnist, and she's trying to use her to help upstage the Baroness. Oh, that reminds me, I just mentioned we get back to that. That is one thing I will say too. Like I said, the film shows Cruella committing very repugnant actions and, framing her as not in the right. But the way they kind of soften the blow and still make her an anti-hero is that they make the Baroness so much worse. You know, it's that same problem that Maleficent had. To kind of soften the blow and make her more heroic, they had to make Aurora's father, King Stefan, so much worse. But again, unlike Maleficent, here, it actually works. Speaking of the Baroness, let's talk about that opening scene. The scene that everyone has seen by now or heard of, and the scene that everyone has been mocking. So if you don't, spoilers for the first, I think 15 minutes of the movie, 15-20 minutes. And if you haven't seen the clip, like I said, it's all over Twitter. There is this scene where Dalmatians kill Cruella's mother by pushing her off a cliff. And everyone has mocked the movie for this. Which, you know, fair. It's a goofy scene. But first of all, I just want to say, it makes sense in context. The Dalmatians, in particular, don't play that big a role in the movie. And they aren't a major motivation to Cruella herself. Again, which I like, because, you know, evoking the live-action movie the way this movie does, Cruella didn't care about the Dalmatians until she saw the design of the coat. If you've seen the live-action movie, you know what I'm talking about. And here, Cruella never focuses on the Dalmatians. She kind of realizes immediately, and here, this is a spoiler I have to talk about, because the Dalmatian thing, again, makes sense in context. But, Cruella kind of remembers, because it's framed as a repressed memory, that the Baroness killed her mother. She basically gave her dogs a kill command. So the target of Cruella's ire is the Baroness. You know, like I said, in context, the scene actually works. Kind of a dark thought, but I have to wonder, would that scene have worked better if it was a mauling instead of pushing Cruella's mother off a cliff? Also, in that regard, I do have to say, you know, like I said, this is a very campy movie, and it's perfectly in tone with the campy feel of the movie. Also, it's not the goofiest thing this movie does. Like, I won't get into details, but the third act is just a goofy, campy, melodramatic soap opera, and everything about it is glorious. Like, the third act is the most fun part of this movie. Is there anything else I wanted to say? Mark Strong is in it. He's barely in it, and he's not used the best. It seems to kind of be a problem for Mark Strong, doesn't it? From Green Lantern to this, people don't know how to use him. Oh, and the soundtrack. It's got some good songs, and I think they tried to use the soundtrack to set up the 60s aesthetic of this story, but at several times, it is really obnoxious. Cruella is a decent movie, you know, it's very well directed, it's got strong performances, again, from Emma Stone, and really Emma Thompson, who just steals the show. There are, the nods to both movies. They should have picked one or the other, I feel, and stuck with it, rather than trying to homage both of them. And like I mentioned, the soundtrack is a little obnoxious. Overall, I would probably give Cruella a 7.5 out of 10. Like, I do recommend you see it. It's a fun time. Even if you don't like it, I don't think you'll leave bored. I think you'll have had a lot of fun. But I can't recommend going out to see it unless you're going to a theater, because theaters are slightly cheaper than $29.99 on Disney+. Otherwise, I would recommend just waiting until it comes out, which, in the US at least, that'll be in August. So you got 2 months. But those are just my thoughts. Have you seen Cruella? What were your thoughts on it? Please start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you will find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is your Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.